Hurt a man's ego. The secret to making him obsessed with you. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." In love, as in life, the secret to capturing someone's soul isn't about playing games. It's about understanding the deeper forces that shape attraction and connection. In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we'll uncover the untold psychological key that can awaken a man's desire in a way that feels effortless, magnetic, and real. As you listen, think about how these principles can apply not just to romance, but to your own journey of personal growth and happiness. And before we begin, I'd love to hear from you. What's the one quality you believe makes someone unforgettable? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's dive in together. 1. Male ego thrives on emotional control, not kindness or overgiving. Male ego thrives not on kindness or overgiving, but on emotional control, on the subtle art of holding your center no matter what storms may come. A man's deepest longing is to feel unique, irreplaceable, and chosen. Yet when you offer constant validation, respond with predictable reactions, or rush to soothe every insecurity, you may believe you are building intimacy, when in truth, you are feeding his ego while quietly eroding his respect and attraction. Respect in a man's mind is born from the effort he must make to earn your trust, your attention, and your presence. If he always knows what you will say and how you will react, the dance of connection loses its rhythm, and the fire that once drew him begins to fade into complacency. Like a rare gem hidden away from careless hands, your heart and your soul must feel like a treasure, not something found in every marketplace. This does not mean playing cruel games or withdrawing affection to manipulate him. It means grounding yourself in the awareness that your happiness and worth are not dependent on his approval. It means responding with thought instead of impulse, leaving just enough space for him to lean forward, to wonder, and to pursue. Men are wired to value what they work for, to cherish what feels earned. When everything is handed to him without pause, the instinct to rise and claim it begins to die. Carl Jung understood that relationships mirror the deepest corners of the unconscious, and that overgiving often comes from a hidden wound within us, a longing to be chosen, validated, or saved. That wound is not healed by another's endless reassurance, but by turning inward, reconnecting with the soul, and reclaiming your own self-respect. The true secret to making a man's desire for you enduring, even obsessive, is to master the quiet power of emotional self-control, not to punish, but to protect the sacredness of your own energy. When you stop pouring yourself out in the hope of being enough, and instead begin to live in your own light, you shift the dynamic entirely. You no longer attract men who seek only to inflate their ego. You draw in men who seek to honor, cherish, and connect with your soul. Obsession is not born from excess. It is born when a man feels he has encountered something rare, a presence so luminous and self-contained that to lose it would mean losing a once-in-a-lifetime chance. If you're ready to step into your power and shift the dynamic, comment below, "I choose myself," to declare your commitment to self-worth and authentic attraction. 2. Break the cycle by removing predictable validation. When you give a man constant and predictable validation, showering him with praise, admiration, and emotional support without pause, something subtle yet powerful begins to happen. His mind stops recognizing it as a special gift and starts taking it for granted. It shifts from being a rare treasure to a background certainty, and human nature will always undervalue what is endlessly available. Carl Jung understood this deeply, seeing how relationships are often shaped not just by what is present, but by the unconscious impact of what is withdrawn. When you remove the predictable flow of affirmation, you interrupt the comfort zone his psyche has settled into. Suddenly, the emotional nourishment he once received effortlessly is gone, and his unconscious reacts with a sense of loss, sparking an urgent desire to regain that special feeling. This isn't about manipulation. It's about restoring balance and awakening his instinct to value and pursue what he no longer has on demand. In a modern love story, a woman spends months praising her partner's every success, sending good morning and good night messages without fail, and always being the first to initiate connection. At first, he responds with warmth, but slowly his replies become delayed. His enthusiasm fades, and his effort dwindles. She starts to question her worth, wondering if she's losing him. But what's really happening is that her steady stream of validation has trained him to expect without earning. One day, she decides without drama or resentment to stop being the constant giver. She no longer rushes to text first. She offers praise more sparingly, and she focuses on her own passions in life. Almost instantly, something shifts. His messages become quicker. He starts initiating conversations, and he looks for ways to see her. The energy has changed from certainty to curiosity, from passive receiving to active pursuit. Carl Jung would call this reawakening a primal archetype within him, the seeker, driven not by comfort, but by the challenge and fulfillment of winning back what was lost. The deeper truth is that attraction and connection are fueled not by endless, predictable giving, but by the ebb and flow of mutual energy. When one person always provides and the other always receives, the spark dims and respect weakens. By breaking the cycle of guaranteed validation, you reintroduce an element of mystery, and mystery naturally reignites desire. This doesn't mean withholding love or affection completely. It means valuing yourself enough to ensure that the exchange is balanced, that your emotional energy is not given without reciprocity. As Carl Jung taught, relationships thrive when both the conscious and unconscious are engaged, and sometimes the only way to awaken the latter is to step back and create space. When you do, you invite the other person to step forward, not out of obligation, but out of genuine longing. And in that space, appreciation, attraction, and love have the chance to grow stronger than ever before. 3. Use the 3 deadly weapons of psychology. If you truly want to awaken a man's deepest desire and make him see you as someone irreplaceable, you must understand a spiritual and psychological truth that Carl Jung hinted at. People do not become obsessed with what is always available. They become obsessed with what they cannot easily possess. In Jung's words, the meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The reaction will never reach its full intensity if there is no element of mystery, no sense of challenge. And that is why the 3 deadly weapons of psychology, emotional scarcity, selective silence, and strategic withdrawal can work like magic when used with wisdom. These are not games, nor are they manipulations. They are the natural expressions of someone who knows their worth and understands that challenge increases value, while ease often signals low worth. Emotional scarcity means you do not endlessly pour out your affection in hopes that he will reciprocate. Instead, you give warmth in measured doses, allowing space for him to feel the absence of your energy when you are not around. That absence creates longing, and longing is the seed of obsession. Selective silence is the art of letting your quiet speak louder than words. In a world drowning in noise, silence is rare, magnetic, and deeply unsettling to those who have grown used to constant validation. When you do not reply instantly, when you allow pauses in conversation, his mind starts to wander. What are you thinking? What are you doing? Are you even thinking of him at all? That uncertainty draws him in, not because you are withholding out of cruelty, but because you have given his imagination space to run wild. Strategic withdrawal is not about punishing him with absence. It is about stepping back gracefully to preserve your dignity and show that your life is full and rich beyond the relationship. When you immerse yourself in your passions, friendships, and personal growth, you radiate self-respect and self-sufficiency, aligning perfectly with Jung's spiritual insight. That individuation, the process of becoming whole within yourself, is the foundation for deep magnetic attraction. A man is drawn to a woman who stands rooted in her own life because she is not clinging, chasing, or over-explaining. She is simply being. And paradoxically, it is in that space of non-chase where he begins to pursue you, because his primitive brain interprets you as a challenge worth winning. When you combine emotional scarcity, selective silence, and strategic withdrawal with authentic self-worth, you are not just creating intrigue, you are honoring your value. You are embodying the truth that you are not an endless resource to be consumed, but a rare presence to be cherished. And when a man feels both the strength of your presence and the sting of your absence, he will not just want you, he will be obsessed with you. Do you see the power in these three deadly weapons of psychology? If you do, comment below. I agree to share your thoughts and connect with others who are ready to master this art of attraction. 4. Strategic silence is a powerful ego disruptor. Strategic silence is one of the most underestimated yet soul-deep forces you can use to shift the balance of a relationship, not through anger or confrontation, but through the art of absence that makes presence more valuable. When a man becomes accustomed to your constant availability, your quick replies, your eagerness to engage, your willingness to always be there, he unconsciously begins to place himself in a position of comfort and control. His ego starts to believe that your attention is a given, something he doesn't have to work for, something permanent. But when you withhold your response exactly when he expects it, when you choose not to chase, when you resist the urge to fill the space with explanations or reassurances, you disrupt that comfort. The absence of your voice, your words, your energy creates a subtle yet powerful disturbance, forcing him to feel the weight of a silence he didn't anticipate. In that unexpected quiet, his mind starts to wander, and insecurity begins to seep through the cracks of his self-assurance. Questions echo in his thoughts. Why isn't she responding? Did I do something wrong? Has her attention shifted elsewhere? It is here, in this void, that longing is born. Human nature is wired to notice the sudden disappearance of what was once certain, and in that noticing, the value of what's missing grows. Carl Jung's insight into the ego reveals why this works so powerfully. The ego thrives on control, predictability, and affirmation. When those elements are interrupted, the mind scrambles to restore them, and in that scramble, emotions resurface. Your silence doesn't just leave a gap in the conversation. It invites his soul to reach for you, to bridge the distance, to regain what now feels precious. This is not manipulation. It is self-respect in its most elegant form. You are not punishing him with absence. You are reminding him that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. Just as music depends on pauses between notes to create beauty, a relationship often needs space to reignite appreciation. When you allow moments of stillness to exist, you create a contrast that makes your presence glow more brightly when it returns. The silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back to him the truth that you are not here to be taken for granted. You are not an accessory to his comfort. You are a soul with your own rhythm, your own worth, and your own boundaries. And as he sits with that realization, the shift happens quietly yet profoundly. His pursuit begins again, not from a place of obligation, but from a renewed desire to feel the connection he now knows is not endless on demand. The very absence that once confused him now draws him in, making him aware that your energy is something to be earned, cherished, and respected. You have not changed who you are. You have simply changed the rules of engagement, allowing your silence to speak in a way that words never could. And in that space, you protect your soul, you guard your dignity, and you teach him without teaching that true obsession is born not from constant exposure, but from the fear of losing something irreplaceable. 5. Shift the power dynamic through self-focus. Carl Jung taught that the deepest and most irresistible form of attraction does not come from desperate pursuit, constant validation, or sacrificing yourself for someone else's approval, but from a place of self-possession where you become so rooted in your own worth that you radiate an energy people cannot ignore. This is why the real secret to making a man obsessed with you is not about bending yourself to fit his world, but shifting the power dynamic entirely by turning the spotlight back onto yourself. When you pour your time, energy, and love into your own physical health, mental strength, personal passions, and meaningful social connections, you create a magnetic presence that speaks louder than any words. Actions like this tell him, without you having to say a thing, that you are the prize, someone whose life is already abundant, joyful, and thriving, whether he is part of it or not. In a world where many people make the mistake of chasing, explaining, or overgiving, the woman who invests in herself stands out as rare and irreplaceable. She becomes the one whose absence is felt more deeply than her presence is taken for granted. Picture a modern example. A woman who has been in a relationship where she gave everything her time, her energy, her emotional labor, only to find herself feeling drained and unseen. When she finally decides to stop trying to fix the relationship and instead begins to fix her focus, something incredible happens. She starts going to the gym, not for revenge, but for her own vitality. She explores new hobbies, maybe photography or dance, not to impress anyone, but to light her own soul on fire. She deepens her friendships, travels to places she's always dreamed of, and pursues career goals she once put on hold. In the process, she stops orbiting his world and starts building her own. This shift is not subtle, it's seismic, and men feel it. The moment a man realizes that you no longer need him for your happiness, that you are fully capable of creating joy, success, and meaning on your own. A deep instinct in him awakens. Psychologically, it triggers both admiration and fear. The fear of losing something precious. The fear that you may never return to the version of yourself who revolved around him. Carl Jung would say, this taps into something primal in the unconscious. The anima or animus projection. The yearning for qualities a person feels are missing in themselves. When you embody self-sufficiency, confidence, and purpose, you awaken in him the desire to be close to that energy, to align himself with it, and sometimes even to fight for it. This is not manipulation. It is the natural consequence of living in your fullness. By choosing to thrive independently, you create a gravitational pull that no amount of pleading or persuasion could ever achieve. You become slightly out of reach, not because you are playing games, but because you are genuinely busy building a life you love. And in that space, his mind begins to spiral. What if she realizes she's better off without me? What if someone else sees her worth before I fight for her? That emotional tension makes your presence more valuable than ever. The deeper lesson here is that attraction is not about convincing someone to want you. It's about becoming someone whose life is so rich, so alive, and so aligned that people feel privileged just to be part of it. You stop making any one person the center of your universe, and instead become the sun around which your own dreams, passions, and values revolve. The man who sees this will either rise to meet you or be left behind, but either way, you remain whole. And in that wholeness lies the kind of irresistible pull Carl Jung understood so well. The kind that makes love flow towards you naturally, without force, without fear, and without ever losing yourself in the process. If this message inspires you to reclaim your power, remember to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep exploring how self-focus can transform your life and relationships. 6. Break predictable relationship patterns. When you truly want to captivate a man's heart and mind, you must understand that your power does not come from chasing, pleasing, or bending to his every whim. It comes from breaking the predictable patterns he expects and replacing them with your own rhythm. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And in relationships, this means becoming fully aware of the subtle games, emotional traps, and manipulations that many people unconsciously play. When you refuse to respond to manipulation, guilt trips, or emotional bait, you immediately send a clear, undeniable message: you are a woman who cannot be controlled. You are not someone who exists to fill the gaps in his ego or to provide validation on demand. You have your own center, your own pace, and your own sacred space, and you are unafraid to protect it. This is not about playing hard to get in a shallow way, nor is it about being cold or distant for the sake of mystery. It is about moving from a place of spiritual strength and self-awareness. You set the pace of closeness and distance in the relationship, creating a dance where he must adapt to your rhythm instead of dictating the dynamic himself. This shift instantly changes the balance of power. You become like a rare and mesmerizing melody, captivating, intriguing, but never on endless repeat for someone else's convenience. He begins to notice that every moment with you is unique, precious, and never guaranteed, and that realization pulls him closer. not out of fear of losing you, but out of a deep desire to truly know you. When you allow yourself to be drawn into guilt or emotional games, you give away fragments of your personal power, often without realizing it. But when you calmly decline to participate, when you refuse to justify, over-explain, or bend your truth to avoid discomfort, you are affirming something far more powerful: that your energy, time, and emotional space are sacred. In the spiritual sense, this is boundary setting in its highest form. It is the recognition that love can only flourish when it is offered freely, without manipulation, without coercion, without fear. And when a man encounters a woman who lives from this place, he cannot help but feel both respect and fascination, because she is unlike the rest. In practical terms, this might look like letting a provocative text sit unanswered until you are ready to respond with clarity, rather than reacting instantly to defend yourself. It could mean smiling and changing the subject when someone tries to provoke you into an argument. It could mean standing firm on a decision that aligns with your values, even when pressured to compromise. Each of these actions reinforces the truth that you live by choice, not by someone else's script. Over time, he realizes that access to your heart and mind is something that must be earned. And the more he understands this, the more he invests in rising to meet your standards. This is the untold secret that makes a man obsessed in the most authentic way, not because you play games, but because you refuse to be played. You embody a balance of warmth and mystery, love and strength, presence and independence, and that balance is magnetic. In choosing to break free from predictable patterns, you elevate not only the relationship, but also your own spiritual vibration, creating a space where love is deep, respect is mutual, and your worth is never in question. In that space, you don't just hold his attention, you awaken something within him that makes him want to become a better man. 7. True power comes from self-mastery, not his obsession. When you control your emotions, stop needing his approval, and operate from a deep well of self-worth, something shifts in the air around you. His obsession is no longer something you chase. It becomes the natural echo of your presence. This is not about playing games or pretending to be indifferent. It is about anchoring yourself so deeply in your own value that whether he stays or walks away, your soul remains untouched. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And in love, this means standing so firmly in your truth that no man's attention or lack of it can make or break you. When you master your inner world, you stop living in reaction to his moods, his silences, his small gestures, and you start radiating a calm confidence that draws him closer without you lifting a finger. It is the quiet magnetism of a woman who knows she is already complete, who does not bend her boundaries to be liked, who moves through life as if her joy is already overflowing, because it is. Self-mastery is not coldness. It is the warm, steady flame that does not flicker in the wind. It is the strength to smile when he pulls back, to remain centered when he tests you, to hold your ground when he tries to provoke a reaction. It is refusing to make his approval the currency of your happiness. Men feel this difference instantly. They may not be able to put it into words, but they sense the unshakable energy of someone whose life is rich and full without them, whose love is offered freely, but never at the cost of self-respect. This is the kind of woman who lingers in a man's mind long after she leaves the room, not because she chased him, but because she didn't need to. Her soul speaks a silent language, one that says, "I choose me first." And that is the rarest beauty of all. When his obsession stops being your goal and becomes a byproduct of who you are, the dynamic changes completely. You no longer measure your worth by his pursuit. Instead, you understand that the true treasure is the power to walk away with your peace intact. This is the paradox Jung understood so well. The less you need from someone, the more they feel drawn to you. And in the end, the greatest victory is not winning his constant attention. It is realizing that your own soul, steady and unshaken, was the prize all along. To affirm your dedication to self-mastery, declare your commitment. Comment below, "I choose my power," to honor your journey and inspire others to rise in their own unshakable worth. And so, perhaps the most powerful secret is not in changing yourself to please him, but in becoming so deeply rooted in your own worth that he can't help but be drawn to you. When you embody this truth, his attention is no longer something you chase. It becomes something naturally magnetized to your presence. If this message resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming insights that can transform both your relationships and your life. The dark truth about betrayal, Carl Jung's shadow theory. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where today we dive into one of Jung's most powerful insights, the shadow theory, and how betrayal, as painful as it is, often holds the mirror to the parts of ourselves we've denied. This video isn't just about understanding why betrayal hurts so deeply. It's about uncovering what it reveals within us and how that revelation can lead to deep personal growth and spiritual awakening. If you've ever asked, "Why did they do this to me?" or "What did I miss?" you're not alone and you're not powerless. As we explore the hidden layers of betrayal, ask yourself, what parts of your shadow have you been avoiding? Drop a comment below if you've ever experienced a betrayal that later became your greatest teacher. Let's begin this journey inward, because the truth, as Jung teaches us, is never just about them. It's also about you. 1. Betrayal is a psychological mirror, not just an action. Carl Jung believed that betrayal is not merely a conscious act of cruelty, but a reflection of deep psychological conflict, a mirror of the inner world. When someone betrays you, it's rarely because they genuinely hate you. More often, it's because being in your presence reflects something in themselves they cannot face. This is the heart of shadow projection. You may embody a quality they've long suppressed. Your confidence may mirror their insecurity. Your truth may confront their self-deception, or your light may expose their internal darkness. In this way, betrayal is rarely personal. It's psychological. It comes from the unconscious, the disowned, hidden parts of a person that emerge not in calm conversation, but in acts of sabotage and emotional rupture. Jung taught that the shadow is the part of us we refuse to acknowledge, yet it still drives our actions from beneath the surface. When people are not aware of their shadow, they begin to act it out by hurting those they love, destroying what they value, not out of intention, but out of unresolved inner chaos. What makes betrayal so devastating is not just the action itself, but what it awakens within the soul. It touches the deepest parts of us, our longing to be safe, to be seen, to be held without fear of harm. And when someone close pierces that trust, the pain is more than emotional, it's existential. It can fracture your sense of meaning, making you question your worth and reality. But seen through Jung's lens, betrayal becomes a turning point. It's the moment when the illusions we've built around connection, safety, and even identity begin to crumble. Were we trying too hard to be needed? Were we ignoring discomfort because we feared loneliness more than disloyalty? These are not just psychological questions, they are soul questions, because every betrayal offers a brutal kind of clarity. It strips away the stories we tell ourselves and confronts us with the raw truth of where we've abandoned ourselves for the sake of being loved. And this is the paradox of betrayal. While it wounds, it also reveals. It reveals what parts of your soul you've silenced to keep the peace. It reveals what patterns you've repeated, what red flags you've justified, and what boundaries you've erased in hopes of belonging. But Jung would say that this confrontation with pain is necessary for transformation. The shadow must be brought into the light. We cannot heal what we refuse to see. And so, betrayal becomes a kind of initiation, a painful rite of passage that calls the soul into greater integrity, deeper truth, and higher awareness. You begin to see that betrayal didn't break you. It woke you. It pulled you out of a dream where love was earned through sacrifice and taught you that real love begins with self-respect. And in this awakening, you reclaim your soul, not in spite of betrayal, but because of it. Have you ever seen betrayal as a mirror instead of a wound? If someone has ever betrayed you, and it taught you something about yourself, share your insight in the comments so others can reflect and heal too. And if you're just beginning to see betrayal through a psychological lens, comment, "I'm ready to understand," so we can grow through this truth together. 2. The shadow self drives betrayal. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow reveals a painful but powerful truth. Betrayal often begins not with hatred, but with hidden wounds that go unacknowledged. The shadow is the part of the psyche where we bury envy, insecurity, shame, and guilt, the feelings we don't want the world, or even ourselves, to see. And when these emotions are suppressed long enough, they don't disappear. They find another way out. Betrayal is one of those ways. It's not always about malicious intent. It's often the shadow lashing out when someone feels threatened by your light, your confidence, or your inner peace. When you start growing, healing, and choosing better, you become a mirror. And that mirror reflects the parts of others they've refused to deal with. Suddenly, your presence becomes a trigger. Your success feels like their failure. Your emotional stability exposes their chaos. And so, they betray you, not because you did anything wrong, but because their shadow couldn't stay hidden any longer in your light. Think about the friend who stops answering your calls the moment you step into your worth, or the partner who sabotages the relationship when you begin to set boundaries. These acts don't always stem from cruelty. They are unconscious defense mechanisms born from the inability to face one's inner wounds. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Many people are driven by emotional patterns they've never examined, and when your evolution makes them feel left behind, they act out. I knew someone who committed to sobriety after years of emotional struggle. His transformation was inspiring, but his closest friend couldn't handle it. Instead of celebrating his growth, the friend began to distance himself, belittle the changes, and eventually cut ties. That betrayal wasn't rooted in hatred, it was rooted in discomfort. His healing journey exposed the friend's refusal to start his own. In a world where emotional repression is the norm, healing can feel threatening to those still clinging to survival habits. Betrayal, in this sense, is not just a personal wound, it's a reflection of collective emotional avoidance. The more you grow, the more you'll notice who hasn't. And sometimes, the price of expansion is realizing who can't walk beside you anymore. The real spiritual wisdom here isn't in avoiding betrayal, but in recognizing what it reveals. The unspoken fears, the hidden envy, the unresolved pain that governs so many relationships. When you understand this, you stop internalizing the betrayal. You stop shrinking. You stop explaining your worth to people who were never committed to understanding you. You begin to see that their behavior wasn't about you. It was about their shadow's reaction to your awakening. And that insight is your liberation. Do you believe your shadow self could be behind past betrayals? Comment with courage. I choose awareness over repression. Let's grow together in truth. 3. Envy is the root emotion behind betrayal. Envy is not loud. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And yet, it's one of the most spiritually corrosive forces a person can encounter, especially when it comes wrapped in the face of love, loyalty, or friendship. While jealousy says, I want what you have, envy says, I hate that you have it. And that silent hatred is often the real emotion behind betrayal. Carl Jung's shadow theory explains that what is repressed in the unconscious, the fears, insecurities, and wounds people refuse to face, does not disappear. Instead, it festers in the dark and eventually erupts, often targeting the one who unknowingly triggered it. When someone close to you betrays you, it's rarely about what you did wrong. It's about the spiritual mirror you hold up. Your growth, your light, your peace, your authenticity, these are all reflections of what others have neglected in themselves. And when you become that mirror, you force them to confront the parts of their soul they've disowned. That confrontation breeds resentment, and when the ego cannot tolerate the pain of inadequacy, betrayal becomes a weapon. They might lash out, spread lies, withdraw support, or subtly sabotage you, not because of your flaws, but because of your evolution. Jung warned us, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. So instead of turning inward and healing, they turn on you. And that's the spiritual tragedy of betrayal. It isn't about the truth, it's about the wound. It's about someone projecting their inner conflict onto the safest, closest target. But betrayal is not just a wound, it's a revelation. It shows you who cannot celebrate your joy, who cannot handle your growth, who only loved you when you were small, struggling, or dim enough not to trigger their shadows. Your spiritual light will always be too much for someone who's committed to their darkness. And that is not your fault. The more authentic you become, the more you will trigger those who are hiding from themselves. The pain of betrayal is brutal, but it carries within it the sacred gift of clarity. It teaches you that not everyone who walks with you is capable of growing with you. It teaches you that spiritual alignment is more important than blind loyalty. It teaches you that some relationships are assignments meant to awaken something powerful within you. So when you feel the sting of betrayal, look deeper. Ask yourself, what shadow was revealed? What truth was made visible? And what lesson your soul was ready to learn? As Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And betrayal, as painful as it is, has a way of doing exactly that. It exposes the spiritual illusions we clung to and forces us to see with awakened eyes. 4. Betrayal is a projection of the betrayer's inner war. Betrayal is rarely just an action. It's a revelation of the betrayer's inner war, a projection of the conflict they cannot face within their own soul. According to Carl Jung, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And that's exactly what betrayal often is: not an act of malice, but a desperate escape from self-confrontation. When someone betrays you, it is not always because you've wronged them. It is often because your light illuminates the parts of themselves they're terrified to see. You trigger the shadow they've suppressed, and instead of meeting it with honesty and courage, they project it onto you, turning you into the villain of a story that was never yours to begin with. They may not even understand why they're doing it. They simply feel threatened, exposed, or inferior in your presence. So betrayal becomes a twisted defense mechanism, a way for them to regain control by wounding the very person who unknowingly challenged their illusion of self. This is the spiritual paradox. You, who perhaps offered love, loyalty, or truth, become the enemy in their unconscious narrative. And yet, none of this has anything to do with your worth. The betrayal is not a reflection of your soul, but of theirs. In truth, they are not rejecting you. They are rejecting the mirror you held up, the one that dared to reflect their insecurity, envy, or unhealed pain. That's why betrayal feels so personal and confusing, because it comes from someone close, and because it often defies logic. But when you understand shadow theory, you begin to see the deeper structure. Their act of betrayal was not born from your failure. It was a confession of their internal collapse. The more radiant your soul, the more uncomfortable it makes their fragmented self feel. In that discomfort, they chose to silence your truth rather than face their own. And in doing so, they tried to transfer their burden onto you, hoping you'd carry the shame they were too fragile to bear. But here's the spiritual truth. Your soul was never meant to carry someone else's shadow. Betrayal only binds you if you let it redefine who you are. The healing begins when you see it for what it is, a projection, not a prophecy. Their betrayal does not mean you were unworthy of loyalty. It means they were unready for the kind of light that demands inner alignment. Carl Jung taught us that integration is the path to wholeness, but not everyone chooses that path. And when they don't, they'll try to make you feel like you're the one who's broken, but you're not. You were the soul that called their shadow forward, and they ran. So don't chase after someone who made a choice to escape themselves. Reclaim your power, not by seeking closure from them, but by closing the door to illusions. This betrayal is not your ending, it's your awakening. The soul doesn't grow through comfort, it grows through truth. And the truth is, what they couldn't honor in you was the very thing you must now protect with everything you have. your light. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights on how betrayal reveals more about their inner wounds than your worth, and how spiritual wisdom can help you rise above it. 5. Self-sabotage is often mistaken for betrayal. Sometimes betrayal isn't what it seems. It's not cruelty aimed at you, but a quiet war someone is fighting within themselves. According to Carl Jung's shadow theory, people often sabotage their own happiness when the parts of themselves they've buried, their insecurities, their shame, and their childhood wounds become too heavy to hide. You might offer them love, support, even peace, but if their unconscious mind tells them they're unworthy of receiving it, they'll find a way to destroy it. Not because you were wrong for loving them, but because deep down, they don't believe they deserve to be loved. Betrayal, then, becomes a form of self-protection and an escape route from the unfamiliar territory of real intimacy. The more whole and genuine your energy is, the more it threatens their shadow, because you represent something they haven't yet integrated within themselves. That's why someone can disappear right after a beautiful moment, or turn cold after you open your heart. What looks like rejection is often a defense mechanism triggered by fear of vulnerability. You see, when someone hasn't made peace with their shadow, they push away anyone who mirrors back their light. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." This is what betrayal often is, an avoidance, not of you, but of the part of themselves your presence forces them to confront. In today's world, where emotional avoidance is masked as independence and detachment is glamorized, this kind of self-sabotaging betrayal shows up everywhere. Ghosting, commitment phobia, or even sudden outbursts that sever connection without warning. A man who's never been seen by his parents might panic the moment you really see him. A woman who was abandoned emotionally may push away love before it has a chance to grow roots. In both cases, their actions are driven by unresolved inner pain, not your failure. And while this doesn't make betrayal hurt any less, it helps you stop blaming yourself. When you understand Carl Jung's insight into the unconscious, you begin to see patterns of how people run from love, not because it's wrong, but because it's overwhelming. And the deeper message here is simple. Someone's inability to receive your light is never proof that you were too much. It only shows they weren't yet ready. So the next time betrayal finds its way into your story, take a breath, step back, and ask, what part of their shadow did my love awaken? That question won't change the past, but it might free your heart from carrying a burden that was never yours to begin with. The lesson is clear: self-sabotage dressed as betrayal is not about your worth. It's about their unhealed soul. And your job is not to rescue them from it, but to recognize the pattern, honor your own energy, and keep showing up for the kind of love that doesn't run when things get real. 6. Repeated betrayal. Signals, unconscious patterns in you. If betrayal keeps showing up in your life, it's not a coincidence. It's a spiritual message, a mirror held up by the universe to reveal what you've been unwilling or unable to see within yourself. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, believed that what we don't consciously face within us gets projected outward and disguised as fate. So when betrayal repeats, when people keep disappointing you, abandoning you, lying to you, or taking advantage of your kindness. It's not always about them. It may be a reflection of a wound in your unconscious that's been silently running the show, a pattern deeply rooted in your emotional history that draws you toward familiar pain under the illusion of love. You might have learned, perhaps very early on, that love had to be earned, that your needs didn't matter unless you sacrificed yourself, or that being chosen required being silent. These messages don't disappear as we grow older. They hide in our shadow, the unconscious part of us that Jung described as the dark side of the personality. Not evil, but unknown. And when we don't know these parts of ourselves, we unconsciously seek out the same emotional patterns we were raised in. That's why some people find themselves repeatedly drawn to those who are broken, emotionally unavailable, or chaotic. It's not that they want to suffer. It's that suffering feels familiar. They ignore red flags, silence their intuition, and stay far too long in situations that drain them because some part of them believes that love must hurt to be real. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This truth is at the core of spiritual healing. Each betrayal may be painful, but it's also a revelation, a moment where the soul is trying to get your attention. Where have you abandoned your boundaries to keep someone around? Where have you confused being needed with being loved? Where have you betrayed your own truth in exchange for approval, comfort, or connection? These are not easy questions to answer, but they are the keys to transformation. Because once you begin to answer them with honesty and compassion, the patterns begin to shift. Spiritual growth doesn't mean closing your heart forever to avoid being hurt again. It means opening your eyes and seeing clearly. It means knowing your worth so deeply that you no longer entertain people who chip away at your self-respect. It means setting boundaries not to punish others, but to protect your peace. It means recognizing that betrayal isn't a punishment. It's a redirection, a painful but necessary callback to your own soul. The more conscious you become of these hidden dynamics, the less power they hold over you. You begin to spot betrayal before it unfolds. You no longer ignore the inner whispers that say, "This doesn't feel right." You trust yourself. So if betrayal has been a recurring theme in your life, ask yourself, where am I still tolerating emotional starvation because I fear being alone? Where am I still allowing brokenness to feel like home? The truth is, you were never meant to shrink yourself to fit someone else's comfort. You were never meant to prove your worth by how much pain you could endure. You were meant to grow, to evolve, to protect your sacred energy, and to surround yourself with people who honor your soul, not drain it. This is not just psychological work. It is spiritual work. And the moment you stop betraying yourself is the moment you stop inviting betrayal from others. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss insights that help you heal and grow. If you're ready to break the cycle and choose better for yourself, comment below. I am aware of my patterns, and I choose healing. 7. Healing betrayal requires shadow work and reclaiming the self. Betrayal doesn't simply bruise the heart, it tears through the soul, collapsing illusions of safety, love, and loyalty in an instant. What makes betrayal so devastating isn't just the act itself, but the emotional chaos it awakens within. The self-doubt, the inner conflict, the haunting questions about your worth. Carl Jung's shadow theory teaches us that healing from betrayal doesn't begin with pretending you're fine or quickly forgiving someone who hasn't changed. It begins with the uncomfortable sacred task of turning inward. Because in the echo of betrayal, your soul isn't just grieving what was lost, it's also trying to show you what's been suppressed for far too long. Shadow work means meeting the parts of yourself you've denied, ignored, or disowned, the anger you were taught to suppress, the pain you minimized to keep peace, the needs you silenced to stay loved. And it's only when you stop running from these inner truths that real healing can begin. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming whole, is not a journey of perfection, but of integration. It's about weaving every fragment of your being, including the ones you once saw as flaws or weaknesses, into a unified and conscious self. After betrayal, this means no longer outsourcing your value to the person who broke your trust. It means reclaiming your emotional truth, even when others dismiss it. It means listening to your body's reaction, your intuition's warnings, and your soul's quiet wisdom that always knew something was off. So many people try to bypass the pain by staying busy, getting even, or clinging to spiritual bypassing like premature forgiveness. But Jung reminds us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That pain must be felt, understood, and honored, not numbed. To truly heal, you must rewrite the story you've been telling yourself. Betrayal often leaves people believing they weren't enough, or that they should have seen it coming. But the truth is, your soul wasn't betrayed because it was weak. It was betrayed because it was open, trusting, and deeply human. There is no shame in that. The shame belongs to those who took your vulnerability and exploited it. Healing means stepping out of the role of the victim and stepping into the role of the witness, the one who sees everything clearly, not with bitterness, but with wisdom. This doesn't mean excusing what happened. It means no longer carrying the weight of someone else's dysfunction as your own burden. It means recognizing that your boundaries weren't the problem your tolerance for betrayal was. As you do the work of integrating your shadow, you begin to see that the pain was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to wake you up. Wake you up to the parts of yourself you abandoned. Wake you up to the patterns you've outgrown. Wake you up to your soul's call to evolve. In that awareness, you reclaim power. You stop waiting for closure from someone who can't even face their own reflection. You begin to close the loop yourself through presence, self-compassion, and spiritual sovereignty. The soul doesn't heal through denial, it heals through radical self-honesty. And the more you lean into that truth, the more you realize that what was broken wasn't your spirit. It was the illusion of who you needed to be to stay loved. This is the alchemy of betrayal. It breaks what was false, so your soul can reveal what is real. Through the ashes of disillusionment, you find clarity. Through the silence of abandonment, you find your voice. Through the pain of loss, you find your wholeness. Shadow work is not easy, but it is sacred. Because in the darkness, you don't just find your wounds, you find your light. You find the pieces of your soul that were buried beneath years of people-pleasing, self-betrayal, and spiritual amnesia. And when you gather those pieces, honor them, and carry them forward, you don't just heal, you become whole. 8. The awakening. From betrayal to sovereignty. Betrayal, though often seen as a devastating end, is in truth a spiritual beginning, an uninvited but necessary awakening of the soul. It arrives like a storm, unexpected and unforgiving, tearing apart the illusions we've built around love, loyalty, and safety. But as Carl Jung wisely said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And there is perhaps no greater force than betrayal to bring the unconscious to the surface, to force you to see clearly what your heart tried so hard to ignore. It exposes every hidden wound, every pattern of self-abandonment, every moment you silenced your voice just to be chosen. Betrayal doesn't just break your trust in others, it breaks your illusions. And if you allow it, it breaks open the door to your deepest power. There was once a woman who loved fiercely, who gave endlessly, who believed that her ability to endure pain was proof of her love. She stayed loyal to someone who repeatedly disrespected her, rationalizing every red flag, shrinking herself to keep the peace. When the betrayal finally came, when the truth of another life, another lover, came crashing into her world, she was devastated. But in the ruins of that heartbreak, she found something unexpected: clarity. She began to trace her pain not to the betrayal itself, but to the countless ways she had betrayed herself first. She realized that the greatest heartbreak wasn't that someone lied to her. It was that she had silenced her intuition every time it whispered, "This isn't love." From that moment forward, she made a sacred promise to herself. Never again would she abandon her soul for the sake of someone else's comfort. This is the path Carl Jung described as individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming whole by facing the truth, integrating the shadow, and reclaiming the self. Betrayal is the fire that burns away the false self, the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the one who performs for love. It leaves you raw, exposed, and emptied of illusions. And yet, in that space of emptiness, you begin to rebuild not from old wounds or external validation, but from a place of sacred self-knowing. You learn to choose discernment over desperation, boundaries over blind loyalty, self-respect over seeking approval. You no longer attract what harms you because you no longer abandon yourself. You no longer beg to be seen because you have finally witnessed your own worth. Spiritual growth doesn't come wrapped in peace and perfection. It comes through rupture, through the moments that demand you look at yourself honestly. Betrayal becomes the great mirror, reflecting not only what others have done, but also where you lost yourself trying to be loved. It teaches you that healing isn't about becoming invulnerable. It's about becoming conscious. It's about waking up to your patterns, forgiving your past, and choosing yourself without guilt. That is the soul's return to sovereignty the moment you realize you are no longer here to beg for crumbs, to explain your value, or to carry pain that was never yours. You are here to rise, not because you avoided betrayal, but because you walk through it with open eyes and an unshakable commitment to your truth. Betrayal didn't ruin you. It revealed you. And in that revelation, in that painful yet powerful awakening, you reclaim the one thing no one can ever take from you again: your soul's authority. Let this be your sacred turning point, not the moment you fell apart, but the moment you rose, fully sovereign, fully whole. That is the hidden gift inside betrayal. And that, as Carl Jung would say, is the moment your fate becomes your choice. If this message has stirred something deep within you, leave a comment of faith. I rise from betrayal into sovereignty. I choose self-respect and divine alignment. And if this truth resonates with your journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay connected to more content that awakens your power and honors your transformation. And so, as we come to the end of this journey into the dark truth about betrayal through the lens of Carl Jung's shadow theory, remember, this betrayal isn't just about what others do to us. It's a mirror reflecting the unconscious parts of ourselves we've yet to face. Growth begins the moment we stop running from the shadow and start learning from it. If this video sparked a deeper understanding within you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful insight in our upcoming videos. What part of the shadow do you think you're being called to explore right now? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.